So we're reading tonight from Mark in Mark chapter 5, verses 1 to verses 20. So beginning at verse 1. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank and into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. So that's our reading tonight. And there's a saying among chefs that the first bite is with the eyes. That when a plate of food is first presented in front of you, it has a big impression upon you. And we can be a lot like that with people as well. First impressions count for a lot, and if we get them wrong, it can take a long time to overturn first impressions. It's why when we meet new people, we're always very polite and friendly. When we have a job interview, we wear our smartest clothes. And in our reading tonight, Jesus is heading to somewhere he hasn't been before, to a people who don't know much about him, and he makes a big first impression. Now, as is so often the case with Mark, the narrative follows directly on from our previous passage. And this was Jesus calming the storm. Now, in verse 35 of chapter 4, Jesus says to the disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." And he was meaning there the Sea of Galilee. And I just think it's strange how Jesus always sounds so ambivalent when he says stuff like that. Let's go over to the other side. Yet there is always a real purpose to where he's going. He would have known that they would encounter the storm, and he would have also known what was awaiting him on the other side of the sea. Yet he seems so calm and unassuming when he first suggests going to the other side. So aside from the storm, which we've already seen and looked at with Morris, there is another reason Jesus wants to cross the Sea of Galilee. Now, if we think back to Genesis 3, verse 15, God says to the serpent in Genesis 3:15, "He will crush your head and you will strike his heel." Now this verse is so famous because it's the first promise we have in the Bible of a Saviour, of a coming Saviour, a Messiah. And it's a promise that this Saviour will crush Satan. Now if we turn to the book of 1 John, in 1 John 3:8 it says this, "The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work." So this passage we're looking tonight is one of the most famous in the Gospels. And if we remember, Mark is writing to prove Jesus is the Son of God. In this section this evening, we see a very real, a very tangible way of Jesus destroying the devil's work. We see him fulfilling those words in Genesis, and further proof that Jesus is the Son of God. We see he destroys the work of the devil, and that is the reason he appeared. It's the reason he wanted to cross the sea. So I think, Eli, if you've got an image to put on, that'd be good. It works, yeah, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. So this account that we have is also in Matthew and Luke, both in chapter 8 of those Gospels. And after crossing the Sea of Galilee, we saw Jesus had power over the natural forces of the world. And we see in the land, in the region of the Gerasenes, he has power over the supernatural. So Jesus has power over the natural and the supernatural. So this is, if you look at the top, the smaller lake, you'll see the Sea of Galilee. You'll see Capernaum at the top, where he set sail from. And kind of the bottom right of the Sea of Galilee is where he lands. Now in Matthew's Gospel, he calls this region the Gadarenes, which is that Garda at the top there. But in Luke and Mark, it's called the region of the Gerasenes. Gerasa was just a larger city, and that's why it's called the region of the Gadarenes. It's a more broad term for the area. On the image of the right, you'll see the region of the Decapolis. So it comes from Sea of Galilee down to Philadelphia. And that means basically 10 cities. So there were 10 big towns or cities which made up the Decapolis, which we'll come on to later. So this region of the Gadarenes is a Gentile region. You may have noticed by the large herd of pigs, Jews thinking pigs unclean. It may also have been home to many Jews who had left the faith. So it's a Gentile area. And Jesus arrives on the shores of the Gerasenes. And he gets out of the boat. And immediately, a man with an unclean spirit comes to meet him. And we find out in the next few verses what the Spirit has done to this man. Firstly, we read that he lived in the tombs. He dwells among the tombs. Tombs were well away from the cities and towns. They were solitary places. So this is a man who was a recluse. He dwelt among dead bodies being seen again as unclean by the Jews. So he dwelt among the dead. This man may draw breath, his body may move, but this man dwelt among the dead. He was happier among the dead than he was among the living. We also read nobody could bind him anymore. And it shows that if this man was not binded, he causes destruction. That the reason he was bounded was for the safety of others. Yet nobody anymore could bind him. The man was uncontrollable. He'd even tore off the chains and broke the irons on his feet. Nobody could subdue him. He was uncontrollable. This man would cut himself with stones. He would bring harm to himself. And read in the Bible that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. And in Deuteronomy 14:1, in the law, it said God commands people not to cut themselves. Night and day, we read, he would cry out. Can you imagine hearing the screams and the wails of this man in the hills and among the tombs? In Matthew's account of this, it says that people would purposefully stay out of the way. In Luke's account, he also adds that this man wore no clothes. Now, nakedness or lack of clothing would bring shame upon oneself. So in this man that we have here, we see the chaos and destruction that the devil brings. We see the damage he does to people. This man was a loner. He was unclean. He dwelt among the dead. He was all but dead himself. He was uncontrollable. He was disobedient, and he was naked. This is what the demon had done to the man. However, seeing Jesus from a distance, he runs and falls on his knees in front of Jesus. And he makes a stunning admission. He asks, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" So this demon-possessed man sees Jesus from a distance and instantly recognizes him. He knows who he is and runs to him. This once shrieking man, uncontrollable, falls on his knees and is suddenly obedient before Jesus. Incidentally, this is also the first admission in Mark that Jesus is the Son of God. Nobody else has said it or declared it. But here we have a demon confessing Jesus is the Son of God. James 2 verse 19 says, "You believe that there is one God. Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder." So you could make an argument here. Well, the demon knows that Jesus is the Son of God. Is he not saved? But it says in the Bible, it is by people's fruits that we shall know them. Now, the fruits of this demon is destruction. And it will continue to be destruction. Demons always know who Jesus is, and they know exactly the power and authority he holds. The demon knows who he is and shudders, and he cries to Jesus, "Don't torture me." So why is it that the demon is so worried about Jesus? Well, it's because of that promise that God made in Genesis 3. He will crush your head. Jesus has come to destroy the works of the devil. That is why the demon is worried. Interestingly, in Matthew's account, the demon says to Jesus, you have come before your time, which is something we can talk about after if you like. We'll not go into it now. You've come before your time. So the demon is worried, and it falls on its knees before Jesus. All the destruction it has caused, all the power it has had over this man, yet when it comes before the Son of God, it knows it is powerless. So we've seen the demon knows who Jesus is, but Jesus inquires who the demon is. Jesus would have known full well who it was. But Jesus asks so that we ourselves may know the name of the demon. Because by knowing the name, we see further demonstration of Jesus' power. So the demon replies to Jesus' question, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And there are many things to note just from this name. Firstly, this is not a human name. If you went up to a man and asked him for his name, you'd expect him to say Charlie or George. You do not expect him to come back with the name Legion. And this demonstrates to us the hold the demon has over this man. Even the man's name has gone. His complete identity has been taken by the demon. The demon has complete dominance over him. Secondly, if we were to use the word legion in today's world, it would mean a vast number of people or things. And in the context of this passage, it would refer to a unit of Roman soldiers. And this unit, or legion, as they were called, would number anything between 3,000 soldiers to 6,000 soldiers. So it's a vast amount of demons. We also find out from this name, from the military connotations it has, and the Roman military was not just any military, it was the most powerful military ever seen on the planet. It was the most organised army ever seen on the planet. These demons are organised and powerful. And not only that, but the Roman army was the most dominant on the planet. So these demons are organised and powerful and dominant. We also see that they are of one mind. These thousands of demons are of one mind. It speaks in first person. The demon says, me and my. If we think back to a month or two ago, when we looked at Mark 3, remember the Pharisees accused Jesus of being a demon driving out a demon. And Jesus replied to them, a house divided cannot stand. How can Satan cast out Satan? We see here again the truth of those words that Jesus spoke. These demons are not divided. They are of one mind. They are organised and dominant. So this man is plagued by thousands of demons, and some say the demon said this to try and intimidate Jesus. Look how many of us there are. You can't subdue us. But this doesn't fit with what the rest of the demon says and does. It doesn't explain why it took the knee before him and was terrified of him. It knows Jesus has complete authority over it. And Jesus draws this information out, this name, to show the authority he has over them. Although there are thousands of demons, Jesus has dominance over them. So that's about Legion. And it seems it has come to terms with its fate. It accepts that it's going to be driven out of the man, but begs Jesus to let it stay in the area. It begs him not to send them out of the area. So if a town or city is prosperous, if it's doing well, its population rises. People move to there. They move for work and for money. A city that is doing well has a rising population. Likewise, if an area is not prosperous, people leave for the grass on the other side. So here we get a lot of information about the region of the Gerasenes. The demons want to stay in it. The region was very fruitful for the work of the demons. It was, as we've seen, a Gentile region, and there would have been plenty of false religions and such kind. It was an area of apostate Jews. This area was fertile ground for the evil works of the devil. It's even more staggering if we think back to Job, and God asked the devil, where have you been? And the devil responds to him. He says, I've been roaming throughout the earth. So the devil has liberty to roam throughout the earth. Yet here, it wants to stay in the region of the Gerasenes. It doesn't have to, but it wants to. And this is where the pigs come into it, the bystanding pigs. And the demons, aware Jesus has complete authority over them, aware he will not send them into another human, afraid it will destroy them, ask to be sent into a large herd of pigs nearby. Now, it's not obvious why they would want to go into the pigs. Perhaps it was their last chance of causing destruction. So Jesus gives them permission to go into the pigs. He allows them to go into the pigs. And they rush downhill into the lake and are drowned. So we've seen from our verses tonight that evil causes destruction. It has caused destruction to the man, and now it has caused destruction to the pigs. And we look around sometimes at the world, don't we? And we can't work out why things happen. Why do people do what they do? And we could turn on our TV at the moment, and we turn the news on, and we see hospitals and children, innocent people, being bombed and murdered. And we can't work out why it's happening. Why would people do that? It's because evil causes destruction. And the worst part of that is that evil doesn't care. In fact, it enjoys causing destruction. It causes physical destruction and it causes spiritual destruction, as we've seen in our passage tonight. So you may be sat there asking the question, well, why does Jesus not just destroy the demons? Why not just get rid of them? Why did he let them go into the pigs? Sometimes God lets the work of the devil serve a purpose. Look at the story of Job. Look at the life of Peter. If you remember, Jesus tells Peter that Satan has asked to sift him like wheat. And then he says to him, but when you turn back, strengthen your brothers. And Peter was tested, but he turns back and strengthens his brothers. And he goes on to bear much fruit in the early church. We look at Paul in the end of 2 Corinthians. He speaks about a messenger of Satan, a thorn in the flesh. And that work was done so that Paul could learn of God's grace, and he could learn that God's grace was sufficient for him. Sometimes God lets the work of the devil serve a purpose. And perhaps Jesus drives them into the pigs so that people have a real way of seeing that they have left the man, that they can see the work of Jesus. They can see the authority he has, the power he has. It also says in our verses tonight that there are 2,000 pigs. Now that's a lot of pigs, even by today's standards. If you heard of a farm of 2,000 pigs, that's a lot. So this was obviously a very large-scale program, and there must have been a lot of people invested in it, either work-wise or financially. And it perhaps explains, when the pig tenders run off to report what had happened, that people in the town and countryside came out to see it. Before we go on to this, some people criticise Jesus over what happens to the pigs, and will say this is evidence of how terrible Jesus is, of what he's done here. He destroys the innocent pigs and he destroys people's livelihoods, their one chance of income. But notice in the text how nobody complains about the outcome of the pigs. After all, why is it that people keep pigs? I'll let you answer that one for yourself. I'm sure that the profit margins were not affected by what happened. So the people from the towns and the countryside come out to see what has happened. And they come to Jesus, and stood next to Jesus, they see the man who had been possessed. They saw him sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. They see the amazing transformation of this man that has occurred. This once uncontrollable, crazy, naked man, possessed by thousands of demons, is now sat there in his right mind and clothed. What was once chaos now seems completely calm. And to us reading it, we'll see it as an amazing miracle. What was once lost has been brought back to life. But notice the people's reaction to this. It says the people were afraid. That's an interesting reaction, isn't it? That's not one we expected them to have. They were afraid. But actually, it's very similar to the reaction of the disciples when Jesus calms the storm. There it says that they were terrified. This was his disciples, even they were terrified. So how can we blame these people for being afraid? They were terrified and afraid. Now again, Mark's Gospel is written to prove that Jesus is the Son of God. So let's look at other times in the Bible when people were terrified or afraid. Firstly, Moses is afraid when he speaks to God at the burning bush. Manoah, Samson's father, and his wife, they fell to the ground thinking they were doomed to die when they meet the angel of the Lord. "Woe to me, I am ruined," cried Isaiah when he saw the Lord. Ezekiel fell face down when seeing the Lord. Paul fell to the ground on the road to Damascus. John, in Revelation, falls to his feet as though he were dead. All of these people saw the Lord. All of these people had the same reaction: terrified and afraid. So what had happened to the man and the pigs is then explained to the crowd by those who saw it. And these people, we expect them to kind of welcome Jesus and thank him, but instead they plead with Jesus to leave the area. That's not another reaction that we were not expecting them to have. But it shows us that these people were more comfortable in their sin, in their sinful lives, than they were in the presence of Jesus. They were more comfortable in their sin. And that's one of the problems of sin, one of the big problems. People become comfortable with it. It becomes natural to them, or it is natural to them. They are in their comfort zone. They're so comfortable that they send away the Son of God. And it has parallels to the rich young ruler who goes away sad and Jesus lets him. The people here send Jesus away and he lets them. And as Jesus gets into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed comes to him and he begs Jesus that he may go with him. Perhaps this man already hates sin so much that he can't stay in the area. Or perhaps it's because he wants to serve the man who had saved him. But again, we have another interesting reaction that we don't expect. Jesus says to him, no. He tells him to go to his own town, where he lives, and to tell the mercy that God had on him. Tell them what the Lord has done for you. Tell them the mercy that's been shown you. So 2 points to close. First point, the qualifications needed to share the news of Jesus. Now, many people feel uncomfortable in this task. They find it very daunting. They have a lack of confidence. They feel they don't know enough. They feel they're not qualified enough. There is only one qualification needed to share the news of Jesus. The one qualification needed is experiencing the mercy of God. That's all that's needed to share the gospel. Secondly, the man thought that the best way he could serve Jesus was by going with him. And sometimes these days we slip into a misconception that the only truly way to serve God and honour him is by having a big role in the church, by being a pastor or working for a church, being a church leader. Sometimes we think that's kind of the only option you have as a Christian. But Jesus tells the man, Jesus told him, you can serve me in your everyday life. You can serve in your everyday life. One of the most famous cases of this is by William Wilberforce in the late 1700s. After he was converted, he wanted to go into the church and become a minister. But John Newton advised him not to. He told him to stay in politics, stay a politician, and be a Christian influence in the Houses of Parliament. Wilberforce went on to abolish slavery in the British Empire. And we can learn from that. We can truly serve Christ where we are. Often we can go to places and we look around and we think to ourselves, where are the Christians here? There's no other Christians here. And when they're not there, we can feel unmotivated and unhappy. But in reality, you are the Christian in that situation. You are the Christian in the office. You are the Christian in the brew room or in the cafe. You are the Christian in that situation. And we love to read the stories of the famous Christians and what they did in their lives. And sometimes we can think that's the kind of pinnacle, that's what I'm aiming for, to do something big that people can read about. But sometimes we have to serve Christ where we are. Sometimes we have to serve Christ where we are. And Jesus tells the man to stay in Decapolis, to stay in that region. How else exactly would people know about Jesus if the man didn't do that job? To close, if you just turn to Mark 7, verse 21. Mark 7, verse 31. 31. And it says, Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee, and into the region of the Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. So we see in those verses, Jesus goes back to the Decapolis, and some people bring to him a deaf and mute man, and they beg Jesus to heal him. How did these people know that Jesus could heal? How did they know that? Perhaps it was the man who had given a life of service to go on not being known or famous, but perhaps it was the man who had once had a legion of demons. We're going to close there.